I set a goal to get this car done in 100 days and make it to Overcrest Rally. Spoiler alert, I failed. It's not really a spoiler. It had kind of been foreseen. A lot of stuff in my personal life took precedence over the project. Things that I won't ignore to go and work on a car. I didn't make the goal, but I was okay with it. Honestly, where this car is compared to where it's been is something that speaks volumes to all the effort and all the time that I've put in. From where it began when I initially tore it down, with galvanized HVAC steel floors and crud and rust and junk everywhere, to now, is an interstellar difference. And it's a clean slate. When I first got this car, I had a pretty clear vision of what I wanted. And for a moment, I did even steer away from it. I think because it scared me into thinking that my aspirations couldn't be realized. And this is kind of the first glimpse into the aura, into the ether of what's in my mind of what I wanted it to look like. And I'm pretty happy with where it's going. It's been a lot of work that happened over the last few weeks. But first, I had to hop on a plane because I wanted to go see my friends at Overcrest Rally.
Take me back to the old dirt road where Mama and Papa used to go. Let's sing all them songs from a long time ago and pine for them old days of yore. Well, let me run through the breeze like the leaves on the trees. Let me fly like the leaves when they fall. Well, let my mind go serene like a cool water stream that runs from the mountain so tall. Oh, take me back down the old dirt road. Take me home to rest where the mockingbirds nest and to cry through the green in the spring. Let's go back a ways to the old bygone days and the simple time we lived back when. Well, let the pull of the plow bring the sweat from my brow and the glow of the fire pull me home. Let me wind down my days in the sweet dusty haze. Take me back down the old dirt road. Oh, take me back down the old dirt road. Take me back down the old dirt road.
In the summertime, I stuck a bore scope down this M54 that came out of a BMW Z coupe. It's a higher performing version of the M54 with a different grind of cam, from what I'm told. I don't know these engines well enough yet, but I'm getting there. Anyways, I scoped the cylinders and I found that there was rust and corrosion and all sorts of junk inside the bores. So I then decided that this thing would go on the shelf, become a core, maybe be something I rebuild, or I don't know. I might end up just getting rid of it. If you want an M54 core, hit me up, it's gonna be cheap. So I had to get it work because I had to take all the accessories off that I needed from it, and all the wiring and stuff that I needed off it had to come off. I definitely was not surprised to see all the corrosion and junk underneath the intake. The ports to the valves were just completely messed up and gross. The valves themselves had what looked like sand inside of them, so definitely can say that I did not get a good deal on this engine. That's all the complaining I'm going to do about that. There's still good parts on it. These coil packs, there's plugs in it. The wiring is still good. And from what I can see, the valve cover was still good. So I planned on using, you know, what I could off of it. And like I said, maybe keep it for a core, maybe just sell it. Maybe somebody can turbocharge it and build it. Who knows? Once I had the select few bits and pieces off, it was time to wheel the new engine over. This M54B30 came out of a newer model 330i. I bought it off of Dean's Beams out in Edmonton, Alberta. He gave me a good deal on it, $1,640, shipped to my father-in-law's warehouse. Did dock to dock, so freight was a little bit cheaper, which is pretty sick. Big shout out to them for helping me out with this. First thing I wanted to do to the new motor was get this aluminum valve cover on top, as I know that these plastic ones love to warp and break and just become brittle and crappy. This one definitely chipped off a few pieces while I was trying to pry it off. I also forgot one bolt, so it did not want to come off easily without, you know, actually undoing it. Underneath the valve cover looks pretty good. Cam lobes all look pretty decent, and there's not a lot of signs of, you know, neglect or anything like that. A little tarnished, a little burnt, but nothing terrible. Timing chain felt good. It was as simple as throwing the gaskets on, and the new hardware and everything came with this kit. I actually got this off of Amazon. It was like a couple $100, and it came with everything to install, so I was super happy with it. So definitely hit a bit of a snag. I realized that the coil packs that I had were not the right ones to go on the new engine's valve cover. I didn't feel confident to take off the old valve cover from the Z engine due to the fact that taking off the newer one had it cracking and breaking on the edges and everything like that, and I didn't want to put a shitty old brittle valve cover back on. Best thing to do when you hit a snag like this is don't panic, don't overthink things, just jump on the phone, do what you gotta do, find the parts.
Yeah, no problem. No, that works great. Yeah, works for me. Yeah, I'll send you all the info and I'll send it over. Yeah, I'll send you the cash right away. Awesome, man. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, talk to you soon.
A huge shout out once again to Nasser at Dean's Beams for always answering the phone and answering my questions and overnighting me a set of coil packs and the harness for them to keep this thing rolling. So in the meantime, I had to do some service to the intake manifold. I had to remove an old wiring bracket that was on there and a couple other little things. As well as I had to take the gaskets for the intake runners off, as there was no way that these crusty old pieces of crap were going to seal to the cylinder head. Definitely would have had some running issues if I did not do some of this stuff. It's kind of the rule of just find stuff that is crud and make it not crud. It's very simple. Last couple things to do the M54 were get the headers on and finish up with the wiring and the coil packs. I had to put the gaskets behind the headers as they hadn't come in when I got them done. And I also had to put some more studs in the cylinder head to get the headers in place. I just used some generic M7 by 1.0 nuts that I could get from Lordco, as the BMW ones were super expensive. So I just got some basic ones with lock washers, called it good. New harness came in from Dean's Beams overnight. It was super quick, got there in the morning. New coils look great, everything fit. I just had to swap over one connector on the power feed for the coil packs. That was it. Next thing to sort out was the wiring for the motor itself. I had to untangle everything as it's been sitting in a bin and been taken out once or twice. Nick from Bimmer Parts in Duncan had thinned out some of the harness already. There's a few pieces that I had to modify a little bit more, a few plugs that I had to change, just to get rid of some wires that I'm not going to need and get everything ready just to run standalone style in the car. I pulled the engine over the bench as I had better light over there, and just started looking at diagrams on my phone to figure out where all the connectors go. After consulting the internet and my workshop manual a whole bunch, I was able to get the wiring all sorted out on the engine. After that, I decided to change out my thermostat housing from the stock plastic unit to an upgraded aluminum housing. It's gonna be a lot better for longevity. And again, the plastic on these cars does not like to stand the test of time.
All right, guys, I haven't talked to you in quite a while. It's been a few weeks. As I mentioned in the narration part of the episode, things have been pulling my attention away from the build. You know, it's personal stuff, not gonna get involved with it. It's just things are more important. Gotta leave the car stuff behind for a while. Motor is basically ready to get dropped in the car. I've got all the wiring on it. I have been sorting out the wiring for the DME and everything. I got it unmounted from its weird plastic BMW shroud. I'm gonna make up some brackets to get that thing mounted to the fender apron. And I wanna try and get the motor in this car and cranking, maybe even fire it up this week. It's gonna be a bit of a thrash. I've got like 3 or 4 days to get this done. I'm gonna throw the suspension and a bunch of parts that are gonna be in the way onto the car, because it's gonna be good to put the third member in with the axle in the car. So leaf springs, axle, maybe I'll just dangle the axle shafts in there for now. Then we can work on the rear brakes. The rear brakes will come later. And then the front suspension, stick the coilovers up front, get the control arms and everything bolted up. Pardon me. Get everything tight and ready to drop the motor in place. I do have to mock up the motor mounts with the subframe again on the engine, just to make sure that it's not splaying out the mounts and stuff like that. And then it will actually go up in the car without the motor being like weird. This is my visual sign for weird. Just gonna try and start bolting stuff onto the car as much as I can. So now that the motor is all situated and it's basically ready to take off the stand and, you know, throw the clutch and the main seal and everything at it, flywheel, blah, blah, blah. It'll sit there until we're ready to drop it in. The rest of the stuff that has to happen to it, basically, like I said, it'll be on the crane, flywheel, clutch, rear main seal, and then it goes in the car with the transmission behind it. So yeah. So for tonight, a couple things I want to check off the list is I just want to get the leaf springs and the rear axle housing into the car, get it all bolted up, see how far I get with that. Fiddling around with getting them in should be pretty straightforward. It's all stock replacement stuff. I do have the axle housing all nicely powder coated from Dave's Powder Coating out in Aldergrove, British Columbia. So super stoked for that. Really good deal on it. It was like $200 and had it in the gun. It was ready to go in like a day. Perfect. As for the front, like I said, control arms, coilovers, and then maybe look at throwing the spindles on there, doing the brakes and all that stuff. Servicing all that's actually gonna be easier when it's on the car. I know that doesn't quite make sense while it's off. It probably would be a little bit better, but I just find it a pain in the ass to work it on the bench. It's just better if it's bolted in solid and you can pull everything off on the car. It's just how I feel. And it's gonna balance the car a little bit. It's gonna have weight on both ends to keep it on the jacks. Anyway, I'm rambling and I keep yawning. I gotta chill. So I'm gonna crank up the tunes and get to work.
So I know going this far into it, it probably seems a little bit ridiculous to be bolting up suspension when I can be swinging the motor in and working on getting it running. The thing is, all this stuff was taking up space in the shop, and to start the next process of wiring and plumbing all the fuel and everything, I needed space on my benches, I needed stuff out of the way. So it was best to get this off all the flat surfaces and just get it on the car. It's not going to hurt anything. It's actually going to keep the balance of the car a little bit better. I'll have something weighing down the back when the motor and the trans goes in the front. I know the front suspension being on is a little bit counterintuitive to that, but you do want to have the car stay balanced, and I can just stick a jack under the front if it leans a little bit. So the first major step to actually make the motor run is it needs power. So start right where I'm putting the battery. I threw some rib nuts through the body. It's probably not the best way to mount it. Honestly, by the time I had finished my battery mount, I was not happy with it, and I'm probably going to end up doing it out of aluminum, doing something a little bit better. But to get it going, this was going to work. Started making my battery cables. I put the ground right to a spot behind the battery where I could access the bottom of the stud through the shock mount hole, as you can see here, just off to the side of it. I can fit a wrench in there to tighten up the bolt with a nut on top, and that's my ground terminal. The positive, my buddy Tom told me that the old Mustang race cars and like SCCA, Boss 302s, Mach 1, stuff like that, they would just run the cable down the passenger side sill plate, and I put mine up over the wheel arch in the back. I brought it up front to where I want to mount this bus bar because I want to have a junction to branch off multiple circuits from the battery with their own individual shutoffs.
Last night I got the battery cables run, and we've got it hooked up to a bus bar here because I want to have a junction where I can have the fuse boxes standalone from the main battery circuit. And then once I've got all the gauges and everything on the dash, I'm going to mount a battery shutoff either up behind the dash so it's a sort of a hidden fail-safe, or I'll just put it on the outside and have a fancy little kill switch that will stop anybody from stealing the car. So the next thing that I want to work on is getting the fuel system put in place. So that means dropping the fuel pump and the hanger and everything into the Holley tank, plumbing it with AN lines from my bulkhead, and then we'll start getting everything plumbed up to where the fuel filter and everything sits underneath the frame rail and then into the engine bay. It's going to be a lot of fiddling and a lot of cutting and fitting AN lines. I got about 50 feet of AN lines, so if I screw something up, we can run through it again. But I don't want to do that because it's really expensive. Anyway, let's get to it. All right, so what we're looking at here is Holley's Sniper EFI tank. This is a 255 liter per hour setup, which actually matches what the stock BMW fuel system output is. So this is a 255 liter per hour pump. I've actually got a Deechworks pump that I could replace this with, and it's 300 liters per hour if we want a little bit more overhead, but I don't think we're actually gonna be stretching this because the BMW system is rated at that maximum. I don't think it takes that much. So we should be okay for what this pump is capable of. The tank setup doesn't come quite ready to go. You have to measure for the depth of your sending unit with the float, which is included. You have to set all this up. Comes with a tube to hook up to your filler neck, as well as the flange and the output for hooking it up. So you just put it right there. It comes with a fuel hanger that is set up so you can trim for your depth and everything like that. So there's a little bit of math we have to do. Basically we have to measure the depth of the baffled part of this in the center, which is where the pump goes. And then we have to measure the depth for the sender and figure out its throw and everything like that. I'm gonna start fiddling with this, get everything put into place, and then we're gonna drop it in and start running the lines to it. So for putting these harder plastic lines on fuel pumps, the way to do it is you kind of have to gently heat the tube and gradually work it on to the feed. Otherwise you can distort it and warp it. So a heat gun or a blowtorch, if you can be finite enough with it, or even one of those little Browning torches. Basically you got to heat this up so that you can get it to slip over this this feed. If you do it right, you can almost get it to seal without even clamping it. So we're gonna do our best to get it on there without bending the tube or distorting it or breaking it off. And then the return line just dangles in the middle of nowhere. With your setup, you should have the sock sitting just a little bit off of the bottom of the tank. You don't quite want it resting under there. You can actually starve it that way by causing it to suction the bottom of the tank, which you don't want. You just want a little bit. So I gotta trim a little bit more off of this because I did it exactly pump minus the depth of the tank, and you want to just add like 1/4 of an inch just to give it that little bit in the baffle. So I'll do that, and then I'm gonna start working this thing onto the pump.
So Holley makes it pretty simple to put these tanks together. They have a table for the fuel level sender to figure out the swing of the float arm and setting the depth and everything, same as a fuel pump. You just have to do a quick equation. Nothing crazy, just plus and minus. If I can do it, you can do it. I was horrible at math and figuring stuff out in school, but basically, being that this is a Mustang tank, it's very shallow, so you have to remove one of the brackets off the extendable arm for the fuel level sender, and I think it's about 4.5 inches to the center of the float arm axis. You just have to measure out from there to set the center of the float. Basically, that'll have your fuel level sender set up. You just trim off the excess of the rod that the float sits on, and you're good to go. To get in the tank is a bit of a fiddle with. You have to mark the position that the float arm and everything sits on, and then loosen it up. Otherwise, you won't be able to feed it through the hole.
Got the handy dandy Vibrant AN line cutters, which make quick work of the frayed ends of this stuff. This has already been measured pretty well to work for from the front of the fuel filter to the engine, so I'm going to leave that piece of excess that I bought to make the rest of the fuel system. So I'm going to trim up the ends of these. You can either use a grinder with like filament tape, black tape, to cut these nice and clean, or I'm going to see how these Vibrant shears do, putting them together. I haven't put together AN lines too much, but from what I have done, I think these are going to make a little bit better of a time. I test them out a little bit, but I haven't put an actual AN fitting into them. So we've got the style that basically you cut your line to length, and then you have to cram it down into the, I guess is the ferrule or whatever it is, and then basically this goes in there and you clamp it, it clamps back on itself and forms a nice tight seal. So, and I got the jaws for the vise and everything to do it. Pretty straightforward stuff.
These reusable AN hoses are actually pretty easy to make. Like I said, you can use some sort of tape. You can use painter's tape or black tape, duct tape, filament tape to wrap where you're going to cut, and that will stop the stainless braiding inside from fraying. Sort of in a similar fashion when you're making a cut on like a veneered wood or something, you put a piece of tape down and it'll stop it from chipping away. It also keeps the outer sleeve braiding from going all over the place and going wacky, because that actually makes it harder to stick it in the hose end and get it to crimp, because it will actually grab the edges and stop you from pushing it all the way flush. You have to push this hose in pretty tightly and get it all the way to the lip for the threaded part to grab it and be able to go back in on itself, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe, but as you can see here, I'm putting pressure on the hose as I'm screwing in the hose end fitting. That just stops it from backing out. And if you can kind of see, I marked the hose when I put it in to see if that backs out, and it didn't, so I was good to go. So getting these all together was pretty straightforward. I had the two in the trunk area from the fuel tank to the bulkhead. Then I had to run from the bulkhead on the underside to the fuel filter, from the fuel filter outlet to the engine. So I just had 3 more fittings to do because the fuel filter is just a hose clamp to put it on. And right about here is where my memory card was getting short on memory and did not memorize everything else I filmed. So the fuel system was done, time to move on.
Last night I went ahead and put a solid state relay panel from Oxbeam in the car, wired up the fuel pump, and got some power going through this thing. Today, I've only got a couple hours here, and I'm gonna put the M54 in the engine bay. So basically, I'm gonna get everything ready by taking this off the stand. I'm gonna put the flywheel and clutch on it and the new pilot bearing. And then that should be ready to take the transmission once it's in the car. But I'm going to get that done, and then I'm gonna swing this in place in the engine bay, and we are gonna start hooking it up. hopefully to fire it up. Let's get to it. It's an absolute deluge outside. Okay, I'm gonna drop this on the ground. It'll be easy to work on there to get the flywheel and everything off. I don't like it when it dangles like that. It feels weird, so. This is the wrong clutch. I should have checked, and I didn't, once again. These splines don't fit the 5-speed input shaft. Great. I have a clutch that I can't return and I can't use. So I'm gonna have to do some Googling, and that certainly puts a damper on things. I guess I could just throw it in with a flywheel and a trans and get it to start. We could do that. I mean, I don't need the clutch right now. It's not like I have a steering wheel or a shifter. Just throw it in with a flywheel, see what happens. And I've made a couple oopsies, one oversight and one I just completely forgot. I didn't realize there was 2 different spline inputs for these clutches. This is a 10 spline input, or the old style 5-speed and 6-speed apparently. I don't know. Anyway, this is the old style 10 spline clutch input for the 3 Series E46, and there is a 22 spline, which is what my transmission is. You know what that means. I don't have a clutch. I was able to call my buddy Jamie. He works at Porsche Parts, and he's got all the ins with all the parts placed around town. So we're gonna world pack a Luck clutch plate and pressure plate in for tomorrow morning. So I'm gonna go pick that up and I'll have it, but actually to get the engine fired up, we don't really need it. I don't need a clutch. I just need the flywheel and the bell housing to crank the engine, mount the starter. That's what we're gonna do, because fuck it. I really wanna hear this thing fire up. So next thing I'm gonna do is, just clean up a little bit first, and then I'm gonna drop the car down to the next level on the quick jacks, and I'm gonna swing the motor into place. Deja vu. It's like I've done this 7,000 times before. Shit's been escalating pretty fast here. I've got the power cable run to the starter and alternator, and the DME is hooked up to all its leads. I got the throttle pedal hooked up, and I got the starter wires, the ground and the signal in place. So from what I understand, this big black wire here is the that's the starter wire, like the signal to it. So I'm gonna just jump a wire into that pin, and I'll just apply some power to it off of one of the leads or whatever, and we're gonna crank it. I gotta throw some oil in it before I do that, but I'm just gonna try and see if it spins over. See if I can wake the, I don't know, I might not even wake the ECU. I just might see if the starter signal and everything is hooked up and everything. I don't know if it has to go through the ECU to get that signal. I don't think it does, it's just a relay. Anyway, I'm gonna see if it wakes. Sorry, I'm gonna see if it cranks. I might see if it wakes. I'm not gonna put fuel to it. There's no point right now. I don't even have gas in it. And I'm coming down with the flu as we speak. Can't really tell by my voice. And I've been fighting it all day, and the motor mount situation is not good because I fucked up, and the motor is actually sitting
The tail end of it is shooting to the passenger side now because I screwed up when I welded the subframe all up with the plates and everything. I re-drilled the holes because I wanted to cock it a little bit. This thing was sitting off to one side, and it was actually that side that I was supposed to adjust, but I adjusted this side. So instead of making it straight, I've now made it even farther over than it was. And the transmission is just like making out like crazy with the tunnel in there that I cut and clearanced. I had this all in the car. I had everything in the car set up, ready to go to like mount in there and be fine. So super unhappy that I made that mistake, but it means I got to pull everything back out. But for now, see if it cranks. Let's see what happens. I forgot the ground from the motor mount to the chassis here, so that's hooked up. I think everything's hooked up. So I'm going to try and crank the starter and get some oil pressure through it. I got the M54 to crank over. It's too late. My kid's sleeping and I'm not gonna open header fire up a car right now, but tomorrow I'm gonna get some gas and see what it does. The throttle was not actuating, and I've got the brake signal switch grounded out, which you're supposed to be able to rev it without the math plugged in like that. But I think the DME, whatever, needs to see that the engine is actually running. So yeah. Or maybe it needs RPM signal or something. I have no idea. Anyway, tomorrow I'm gonna get some gas and throw it in there and see what happens. I got the fuel pump wired up to the separate panel. I could probably figure out the relay that's actually on the BMW side of the harness. But because I've got this one hooked up already, I'm just gonna try it just for simplicity's sake, and maybe we can hear this thing make some noise. So I guess I'll see you guys in the morning. For a time, I didn't think I'd actually get this far. I didn't believe I was capable of making these sort of things happen. And fast forward a few years, completed several major projects on these cars and taken insane adventures in them, and here we are, getting a BMW engine to fire up in my 68 Mustang. That I didn't even think I'd be able to make a whole car at one point. I did have doubts. I probably tried to hide them, but it was best just to look forward and be positive about it. And look forward to making that noise. Today is one of those days that I realize if you stick to your guns, the mantra you believe in, it's 100% true. I'm gonna leave this garage today better than when I came in. Cars need enough gas in the tank to actually physically run. I put in like 2 gallons, actually probably like 1.5 gallons, thinking that was good enough. And I wasn't getting fuel. I had spark, could see the throttle moving, so it should have ran. And I'm like, why isn't it getting fuel? And I thought I tested the fuel lines. I thought they weren't leaking. They could very well leak right now. But yeah, there wasn't enough gas to fill the main baffle because it's a newer EFI tank. There's a center baffle that the fuel pump sits in, and it didn't fill up. So I was just running pump dry. Excellent, probably have to replace that. But I think now should see fuel pressure should crack off. See you guys next time.